you can actually take the transcript from an event like this or from a conversation and turn that into a lot of different content.
Yes.
I use Copy AI. I use a tool called Spiral. I don't know if you guys have heard about Spiral. It helps you. Spiral helps you take patterns. So if I want to go from long form to like a tweet thread, it's like a very quick way to just get to this format that you want.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Tammy, content writer at the top remote company Buffer, and we're talking about how to squeeze more out of your content with clever repurposing and efficient workflows. All right, let's get into it.
So I thought it'd be great to just chat with you and, hear what's going on in your world of content and share it with the audience. So let's just get started and tell me a little bit about yourself. All right, I know you're a remote worker. You're based in Nigeria. You do content, but yeah, give me your 1-minute self-intro for those who aren't familiar with you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Tammy Oladipo. There's a much longer first name there. Tammy is just for ease of pronunciation. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm from Nigeria. I've lived here my whole life. I work remotely for a social media management software company, mouthful, called Buffer, and I'm a content writer at Buffer. And yeah, that's my career self-introduction. All the rest of the stuff is very personal. So yeah, that's me.
We're remote workers, both of us. You're in content writing. Tell us what tools you're using. What kind of new things are you doing? Especially, everyone's touching AI in one way or another, but I want to know what you're actually using. So can you share with us just the things that you found most interesting recently for yourself?
Well, personally, we talked about this before the call, but I've been using Lex as a word processor, trying it out with some articles. It's an AI-powered word processor. So it doesn't write the content for you, but it's like different features really help as a companion with content writing. So I've been finding that really helpful as like a pre-editing before I send it off to my team to take a second look at my article. I've also been using Beehive for my newsletter. I don't know if they have too many AI integrations actually, but yeah, Beehive is also part of my process. Notion, of course, I feel like that's standard for many remote workers. Notion is a huge part of how I work, and I don't know what I would do without it. I know many people find the learning curve too difficult, but honestly, once you get past the initial confusion of UI and stuff, it's such an amazing tool. And then, surprisingly, Brain FM. The whole team has been using Brain FM.
Tell me about that. I have not heard of this one. Tell me more about this.
So it's, how do I describe Brain FM? It's like sounds. So like you could pick up a playlist on Spotify and just play that, like any lo-fi or work assistance playlist or like jazz playlist. And I do that. But Brain FM is like, I don't know what they put in it. I don't know what the science is behind it, but the music is really good for helping you concentrate. So I use that for focus time when I really need to just sit down and do something. I set a timer for like 40 minutes to an hour and I can knock it out in no time. And I really don't know what it is behind it, but
okay,
it works.
Brain FM. I will have to give this one a try. And so Tammy also mentioned, you just mentioned Lex, L-E-X. I don't know for those of you folks out there, if you've tried it. I just tried it this week because she mentioned it. And so I will report back. I will share something on LinkedIn later, maybe next week, about my experience. Because I do think that Google Docs feel old now when you're using them after you've used other things. It feels very clunky. So I like to see that there are new options for us. So let's go beyond the tools and tell me more about like things that you've done in the last, let's say, year or so. Any like workflow changes or things that you've done that have helped you produce content better, faster? Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so in terms of content production, I think something that's really changed in our process is figuring out how to extend the life of a certain piece. So it's like when you have the idea for something, in the idea stage, you're thinking, okay, can this be a YouTube video? How many short videos can we make out of this? What's the thread for this? What's the LinkedIn post for this? What's the carousel for this? And doing that, laying that out, we have this like Figma doc where we just sat down and like outlined what the process is for every single piece of content that we create. And it's been very helpful for helping us visualize just in the early stages how to take a piece of content beyond just a blog post, because that's been Buffer's main like form of organic content, sharing blog posts on our like long form blog posts on our blog. which are great, but the blog is one thing. It reaches who it reaches, but it's not the only place that we could be reaching people. So that's something that has changed, just thinking about how to extend the reach of our content a bit better. We've also been working a lot with freelancers who are amazing, who have been helping us to do more work and putting less pressure on the team so we can think about all these things. And then in terms of tools, just trying out tools like Riverside, like this, for a podcast/YouTube show that Kirsty, my colleague at Buffer, has been doing. Also YouTube, using CapCuts, just trying out different tools and seeing where things fit into our workflow.
So you touched on freelancers, and I actually want to go deeper into this because obviously that's one of the areas that ARC does. I work for ARC, obviously. Yeah. And recently we've been talking about in the team, like what work we do ourselves, what work we use AI to help us do faster, and what work we work with freelancers for. So how do you guys determine what goes where, or like even just the big buckets of what you do internally versus freelancers? How do you decide?
So with freelancers, I think what we have, or like what we've currently landed on, is that the work that's kind of standardized at Buffer, and at least on the marketing team, kind of go out to freelancers, and that is long form blog content. We have a very solid process in place for how we ideate, how we write, how we edit. So sharing that externally felt like something, it just felt natural. It felt like it was going to be very easy, and it has been, because we work with great people, of course. That's a very important part to that process as well. But having like a standardized process, whatever you have a standardized process for. So I imagine in some other teams that may be video. So they have figured out like what their video process is, how to script, how to film, how to edit. So they don't need to do too much thinking when outsourcing that to people, or when trying to work with other people to create their videos. But for us, video is very new to us. We don't have a very firm process in place. So while we're figuring that out, we're sharing with freelancers the things that we standardize. So I think that's how we're currently approaching it. So we do all our own filming and editing when it comes to videos. We do graphic design in-house. The SEO stuff we do with the consultants, but like the ideation we do in-house as well. And I think we're currently at a sweet spot where it doesn't feel too overwhelming. Like all of these things don't feel too overwhelming because we've hired such great people to work with. So yeah, that's how we're currently approaching it. Things may change in the future, of course. Yeah.
But I think that's smart. Like, it's like you figure out the process, and we do the same thing with our team. Like, we have to figure out what we want. And once we're clear and we have a process that we've tested and we've refined, then we feel comfortable working with freelancers or working with someone that can execute the thing that we feel confident in. I think that's what we do as well internally. Yeah. Okay, so because we're only talking for 30 minutes, I want to make sure we get to all the good stuff. Okay, what's the reality of content writing today? So I know you just touched on a little bit on AI, a little bit on freelancers. Like, what are maybe some things people think, like, oh, you don't have a job anymore because AI can do your job. Obviously, that's not the case. That's a myth. But like, how has your role changed due to AI? And what is like the reality today versus a year ago or 2 years ago?
This is something that has also been very top of mind for us on the team. I always say this, AI can do a lot, but it can't build human connection because it isn't human, right? So I think there's still a lot for content writers and content marketers to do before AI takes over everything. I think there's still a lot of opportunity, but it's going to require stretching yourself beyond just writing, beyond just content analytics. I think up till very recently, I don't know when ChatGPT was first released, but whenever that was, I just had gotten kind of comfortable with the standard of the situation of SEO at the time. It was, you write a certain way, you publish certain things, and you will rank on the first page of Google. And that was the main focus for a lot of teams. And that wasn't a bad thing, but it meant that there was more focus given to ranking than on like the quality of content itself. So I think for us now, what we're focused on is how can we bring in that the unique humanness into a piece. And that's taking data and applying it to what we're noticing in the real world for our audience, breaking down the numbers into, and then connecting that to things that we notice among our community, among So the social media landscape or whatever, or speaking to experts, speaking to people who have done the work, and then integrating that into SEO pieces. So that's where I think AI may not, it may take a while for AI to take over that part of content writing. Also, like I said, stretching a piece of content. So I know there are some tools these days that people can use to like take short clips of videos and turn them, like take your long form videos and turn them into short form videos. But notice how everyone is turning something that was already created into like the short form version or the carousel post or whatever. Someone still has to do the work before the AI can then do something. So it's film the long 30-minute video and then clip it up into 15-second clips for LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok. So I think that's where people shouldn't be too worried, because there's still lots that there's still a lot of skills that you can add to your repertoire that can kind of insulate you from the rise of the robots.
Yeah. And I think you touched on like the idea of connecting the dots, which I think maybe AI will get good at that eventually. But that's something that like as a human, you have all this experience and knowledge where you're connecting dots together to find data that is relevant for the audience and things that it's not just simple output. It's a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
And I think you've also touched on the fact that you need a kind of like a core asset. So in this case, you might have a great long form blog post that you've spent a lot of time creating. You need that first. Then you can use AI to create snippets or to create, short form assets. Even just like when I do chats like this with folks, this conversation, there's a lot of preparation for the conversation we have. And then this conversation can become other social content after. Yes. But you can't just start with the AI without having that core. Absolutely. Okay, so you're also known for remote work, not just as a content writer, but just as a remote worker. Obviously, you have a lot of content you've produced just on remote work resources. You've shared your experience on how you landed a job at Buffer, and you've had remote jobs even before then. So let's just talk about remote work for a little bit. I write a lot about remote work as well. A lot of people, I think there's still such a demand for remote jobs, but the supply is still not as big, right? So for people who don't work remotely, let's just say for that group, what are some myths that you think still are around today for people who don't really work remotely?
The myths are many.
Your favorite myth?
My favorite myth is the idea that like you can't do good work unless you're surrounded by other people. I think there's something about office culture that I get it. I get what like being in community and being in a space with people can contribute to doing good work, but people are also just immediately discounting the value of all the tools that have come up in the past few years. And all the people who have been working remotely, I don't think remote work isn't like a very new thing. It's just that more people got to know about it and because of the pandemic, right? But before that, people were doing amazing work and they were reaping all the benefits and the rest of us had no clue. And to say that you can't do good work, or if you feel like you can't do good work, then definitely pursue an in-office job. But I don't think it should be a blanket statement applied to all remote workers. And it also isn't fair. I think there's a lot of value in letting people choose how they work. I think like even just psychology of it changes how much efforts people are willing to put into something if they can choose how they get to do that thing. Most people still don't get it fully, and I'm not the one. Some people have tried it and it's not for them. It's definitely a personal preference situation. Yeah, I don't think it should be like a blanket statement applied to all remote workers, all remote work, that it's like not as valuable as being in an office, because I've seen that sentiment a lot more recently, and I don't know where that's coming from. So,
I think a lot of times people take bad things that are happening and blame like, oh, it must be the remote work, but it's probably the processes of the company, or there's a lot of things that can go into like, bad things might be happening, but it's not remote work as the cause. It sometimes just gets used as an excuse. Okay, so that question was for people who don't work remotely, but then you have the other camp, and I'm sure there's people watching who are remote workers themselves. I want to ask you about synchronous versus asynchronous communication? Because I saw, is your boss Haley? Is she still your boss?
Yeah,
your
Haley.
Manager?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Haley's your manager. I saw her post recently about how you guys don't do. Is it like meetings? You have like recurring meetings that are no longer. You just basically just clear your schedule. So you're moving more towards async work. Tell me what your feelings are about async versus synchronous work.
I think there's a time for both. Asynchronous work, we're having a deep work quota. So for the past couple of months, for October, November, and December, we have phased out recurring meetings as just a test. I think the 4-day work week at Buffer also started out as something like this, just a trial. So we're trialing it at the moment to see where meetings fit into our processes and where they don't. And what I've noticed is that some things definitely require FaceTime. So I used to be like a full asynchronous work. Like I'll hop on whenever and do the thing at my own pace and my own time. But I think it's about recognizing like what tasks require either thing. And people just need to be aligned on what requires asynchronous work versus what requires like being together and making a decision within like 5 to 10 minutes. I think a lot of it comes down to discipline, because it's easy to say we're fully asynchronous and we only do asynchronous and there are no meetings whatsoever. But there's like meetings aren't a bad thing. It's just that the way people have been approaching meetings historically it's left a bad taste in some people's mouths, to say the least. Which is why I think we're seeing like some companies, I think it was Shopify, if I'm not mistaken, that also recently like phased out meetings in their company. And there's definitely space for both. I enjoy asynchronous work because it allows me to collaborate with people across different time zones more easily and not be as panicked when I don't get an immediate answer to something. So there's that. But I think there's definitely space for finding time to meet with people and also setting an agenda, being very clear about what the purpose of a call is or a meeting is, and sticking to that. So yeah, discipline, I think, is where my feelings, that's where I'm at with synchronous and asynchronous work. I think everyone should just stick to the purpose of like each thing.
Yeah.
And not abuse the privilege of either.
And like you're highlighting the idea of being intentional about whatever work you're doing. So if you're like working asynchronous forces you to be intentional about how you work. And I think,
that's where
if you do have a meeting,
is.
like let's say you have one meeting every month, you have to be a lot more intentional about that meeting and using people's time appropriately. So yeah, I like that. Okay, so there are people in the audience probably curious, how you got your job at Buffer. I know you've talked about that, so I know you have a video. It was recently that you shared it, maybe within a month. So go check out her LinkedIn. She did share that if you want to know the details. I won't rehash that here. But can you just give some advice? And it's something, obviously, we do this at ARC. We're trying to enable talent globally to work anywhere, work from anywhere. And so what are your biggest tips? Maybe non-obvious tips, right? The things you wouldn't think about that people who want to get a remote job, especially somewhere that might be in another country. Because a lot of times like US-based remote work, that's a different ballgame than trying to get a job that's in another country, right? So what are your tips for global talent who's really looking to have a global remote career?
I feel like I've said this too much, but like you said, there's some people who may never have come across my videos for like LinkedIn content before. So I'll rehash the same advice, which is to think of yourself, if you're looking for global opportunities, think of yourself as global talents. So it's not just about pursuing it, it's about reframing how you think about work, how you think about how you work personally, what opportunities are accessible to you. Opening up your mindset it sounds kind of hokey, but it's the thing that I feel like really helped me when I was first starting out, because at some points it was almost like I got into this mentality of, oh, they're turning me down because I'm from XYZ country, or because I look like this, or because my name is this. Once you remove all those things as like excuses or reasons, they may be true, but like you don't know. Unless someone has like directly confirmed to you that this is the reason we're turning you down, you don't know what the reason is. So I think as long as you're pursuing global opportunities, think of yourself as a person pursuing global opportunities and leave the potential biases behind. It will help you, and it will also help how you put yourself out there. Of course, you can shake things from your own personal experiences. You can tell your stories from through the lens of like where you're from or like the kind of upbringing that you had. But if you use that as like, if that becomes what's all you're known for, for me, I guess the term would be, I'm a Nigerian looking for a job in the US. I just see myself as a person looking for an opportunity. Could be anywhere in the world, could be with any sort of team. But yeah, that reframing has been so helpful for me, and I hope it helps someone else as well. Yeah, that would be my main piece of advice.
Really appreciate that you shared that, Tammy, because I mean, you didn't go like, oh, this is how you need to do your resume or your portfolio. But I think sometimes it starts with that internal, it's almost like that self-limiting belief that could limit you from even, it kind of impacts how you would do anything. And so starting there from that core. I was actually just speaking with my teammate, Gina. So Gina from Mark also shares a lot about how global talent can find remote careers. And she and I were talking about the way you think really impacts everything in terms of how you live, how you work, your relationships. So I think that was a really great point. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. We've talked about content. We've talked about AI. We've talked about remote work. Is there anything else that you would like to let people know, or the things that are most on your mind? I love to talk about the areas that people are most excited about. So is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd really like to share with people? It could be a new tool, it could be something old, it doesn't have to be new. But what else is on your mind?
I think the only other thing that's on my mind, I don't know if it's necessarily related to this, but something that I also share pretty lot on my social media everywhere is personal branding, how you present yourself to the world, and choosing to do that, not letting anyone else tell your story for you, or not letting your big achievements be the only thing that you share with people. What are the lessons that you're learning? Those are the things that people look at, especially in your remote environments, especially when you're searching for. I think marketers are both fortunate and unfortunate in the sense that you kind of have to have a voice somewhere for people to, like, you have to have either done work that kind of speaks for itself or be sharing your work. So that's like, that speaks for you when you're searching for opportunities. So I think it's not a missing piece. I think people are trying a lot more. Platforms are integrating a lot more tools and features. LinkedIn has added video. And I think those sorts of things will be very big, especially going into next year, to help people just expand beyond wherever they are currently. But yeah, if you still see sharing on LinkedIn as like cringe, I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't say you don't have a choice. There are definitely people building who have amazing careers who don't have like a social media presence whatsoever, but it will be a big advantage.
They're the outliers.
Yeah, they're
absolutely
the outliers. So yeah, that's the only thing.
I definitely agree with you. I've been posting every day for the last, let's say, 6 months or so. And I would say a lot of marketers I talk to that don't do it, I think they don't know where to start, or they don't feel, like you said, they feel like, oh, I have little things to share that aren't worth sharing. Yeah. I would encourage you, share first, because the act of sharing and sharing regularly, whether it's LinkedIn or maybe you're on TikTok, whatever, the act of sharing helps you improve also as a marketer. It helps you improve the way you write, the way you present yourself. So I think the act of doing it is almost as important, and then the results will over time get better and better. So I'm sure if you look at your content from a year or two ago, you might be like, oh, it maybe is a little cringe, looking back, but that means you've been growing, and that is, it is helpful as a marketer. So those are great tips, Tammy. I really appreciate it. Well, our time is up. I think I could talk to you for, another hour, but I really appreciate your time. We had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning, but I will be sharing the content. I'll be sharing some short videos afterwards. As I mentioned, after doing these talks, one of my tips for people is you can actually take the transcript from an event like this or from a conversation and turn that into a lot of different content.
Yes.
Yeah.
1000%.
So I'll be doing that, and I have some tools. I'll share the process as well. I use Copy AI. I use a tool called Spiral. I don't know if you guys have heard about Spiral. It helps you, Spiral helps you take patterns. So if I want to go from long form to like a tweet thread, it's like a very quick way to just get to this format that you want. So it's kind of like mini, like ChatGPT template. So I use Spiral. I use ChatGPT, of course, Copy AI. Those are some of the tools I use. So stay tuned for the content after this event, and I'm sure I'll be continuing to share our learnings and the things that you shared with the audience going forward.
Of course. This was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right. Take care, Tammy. Hope to see you soon.
All right. Bye, Christine.